The poor waitress with a scar on her left cheek was mocked by everyone in the restaurant, not seen as a person, humiliated, pointed at, treated like an animal. But everything changed the moment a millionaire walked in, and what he did made them all regret it. "You should wear a paper bag over your face," the man at table 6 said, loud enough for half the diner to hear. Elhart froze. Her hands, still holding the carafe of coffee, trembled just enough to make the dark liquid slosh against the glass. She didn't turn toward the booth. She didn't have to. The laughter that followed said enough. A second voice chimed in, younger, brasher. "That scar's got more personality than her whole face." Mandy, behind the counter, made a soft sound of protest, but said nothing. No one ever did. Not really. Not when it was about that, the slash of pale skin that traced Elle's left cheek like a cruel afterthought from a childhood no one bothered to ask about. Elle refilled table 4's mug with a practiced calm she didn't feel, her lips pulling into that tight, crooked smile that never reached her eyes. Her scar tugged the left side of her face up, a permanent, unintended smirk, which only made it worse in moments like this. She was halfway back to the kitchen when someone muttered, "Bet she got that fighting off rats in the alley." The coffee pot hit the counter a little too hard. No one flinched. They never did. In the kitchen, the fluorescent light buzzed with unbothered indifference. Elle leaned against the steel prep table, closing her eyes for 3 full seconds. No one came in after her. That was the other pattern. The laughter followed her in, but the people stayed outside. This was supposed to be a stopgap. 3 months, maybe 4, after her mother died and the debt collectors started circling. But that had been almost 2 years ago. The midnight shifts and the pitying glances had become part of her skin, just like the scar. "You okay?" Mandy finally poked her head in. Elle nodded once, a lie in motion. "Just needed a minute. You should tell Jerry about them." Mandy's voice was soft, angry. "It's harassment." "And do what?" Elle said. "He'll ask them not to come back. They'll leave a 1-star review. He'll ask me to apologize to avoid bad press. It's not worth it." Mandy hesitated. "Still, they don't get to talk to you like that." "They just did." That was when the bell above the door jingled, again, and a gust of cold wind followed someone inside. Elle didn't look up as she stepped back onto the floor. She didn't want to. The coffee pot was still warm in her hand. She poured with mechanical precision. But something shifted. The booth in the corner, the only one not yet cleaned, wasn't empty anymore. The man sitting there looked out of place. A navy wool coat rested on the seat beside him, collar sharp, watch gleaming even under the diner's sad yellow lights. His eyes followed her with the kind of focus that wasn't casual. When she passed his booth, he didn't speak. Just nodded once, as if acknowledging something unspoken. She didn't notice the card he slid under his saucer until 10 minutes later when she went to clear the table. Jack Miller, Haven Projects. Executive Director. A single sentence typed neatly beneath his name, "Some things are meant to be rebuilt." Elle stared at the card, the paper thick between her fingers. She'd seen men like him before, tailored ambition, practiced charm. But this wasn't flirtation. It wasn't charity either. The man at table 6 laughed again, a snort this time, about something unrelated. But the sound made her shoulders stiffen. Elle slid the card into her apron pocket, and went back to work. She didn't know why she kept it. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the look in his eyes, not pity, not disgust, but something else entirely. Recognition. Or maybe, for the first time in years, someone had seen past the scar. She didn't sleep that night. The card stayed on her nightstand, face up, catching the soft glow of her bedside lamp like it was daring her to pick it up again. Some things are meant to be rebuilt. The words haunted her. Not because they were cruel. Because they weren't. Elle lay staring at the ceiling of her studio apartment, the same one she'd lived in since her mother's insurance payout ran dry, listening to the soft hum of her mini fridge and the sirens in the distance. Her scar itched. It always did when she was nervous. By morning, she'd memorized every line on that business card. By the time her shift started at 7 a.m., she already searched Haven projects on her cracked phone 3 times. A nonprofit. Real estate development with a focus on social good. Job training. Community kitchens. Second chance housing. And Jack Miller, former Wall Street darling turned philanthropic investor after his brother overdosed in a halfway house that had been shut down for code violations. There were press releases. Board photos. A TEDx talk she watched on the break room computer with the volume low, and her heart in her throat. She didn't understand what he wanted from her. That afternoon, after lunch rush but before the dinner crowd, she dialed the number on the card. It rang 3 times. Jack Miller, came the voice. Same calm certainty. Like he expected the world to bend toward him. This is L. Hart. From the diner. Her voice sounded smaller than she wanted it to. Tight around the edges. I was hoping you'd call, he said. No hesitation. Why? It came out sharper than she meant. There was a pause. Because I know what it's like to carry something on your face that people won't let you forget. Elle didn't know what to say to that. Jack continued, slower now. I don't do charity, Elle. I do structure. I do systems. You remind me of people I trust with both. You kept that diner running last night while half the staff disappeared. I noticed. I'm a waitress, she said flatly. No, he said. You're a leader in hiding. That should have made her laugh. Or hang up. But it didn't. Instead, she asked, What is it, exactly, you're offering? Come meet me, he said. Let me show you. The cab dropped her off at an old brick building 2 miles west of the diner. The sign read Haven West Kitchen, grand opening in 4 weeks. Inside, it smelled like sawdust and hope. Volunteers in branded t-shirts painted trim and assembled tables. Jack was already there, in jeans and a black t-shirt, clipboard in hand. You showed up, he said, not surprised. You asked? He handed her a hard hat. Walk with me. They toured the facility in silence. The kitchen gleamed with brand new equipment, stainless steel so polished it felt out of place. There was a classroom attached, whiteboard, long tables, a projector. A training center. Every year we take 20 candidates, mostly women leaving shelters, some coming out of the system. We teach them everything from kitchen basics to inventory control to budgeting. Then we help place them in real kitchens, real jobs. But we need someone to run this one. And you want me, Elle said slowly. Because I handle obnoxious customers and don't cry in the walk-in? He smiled. That's part of it. She folded her arms. What's the rest? You don't quit, he said simply. Even when people are cruel. Even when it would be easier to hide. The words stung. Because they were true. I'm not qualified, she said. You are, he replied. You just don't think so yet. That night she stood in front of her bathroom mirror and really looked at herself. Not just the scar, though it was always there, mocking her with its permanence, but herself. The faded diner uniform. The tired eyes. The woman who hadn't allowed herself to dream in years. What would her mother say? Elle had spent the last 5 years surviving. Getting by. Holding breath and bracing for the next collapse. But somewhere in her gut, something had started to shift. That simmer of possibility. The nerve-rattling terror that comes right before you say yes to something new. 2 days later, she returned to the Haven West kitchen. Jack handed her a binder and a badge. Acting manager? She read aloud. For the next 30 days, he said. You prove yourself, it becomes permanent. You don't. No hard feelings. She narrowed her eyes. You always do business this way. He shrugged. Only with people who have something to prove. The staff was rough. A mix of 20-somethings who thought they knew everything and second-chancers who barely looked you in the eye. But Elle moved through them like she had at the diner, steady, direct, quiet authority. On day 3, she broke up an argument in the pantry. On day 5, she created a prep schedule that actually worked. On day 10, She stayed until midnight fixing the cooler because no one else could. She didn't tell anyone about the scar. She didn't have to. They saw it. But here, no one laughed. Here, the eyes that met hers weren't judging. They were watching. Waiting. Wondering if they could trust her. She made sure they could. On day 15, Jack came by unannounced. She was elbow deep in a food order gone wrong, short 2 cases of eggs and 4 loaves of bread. He watched her handle it. Calm, assertive, no wasted words. "You're not just surviving anymore," he said when she finally looked up. Elle didn't smile. But her voice was different now. Stronger. "I think," she said, "I'm remembering who I was before I got used to being invisible." He nodded once, then added quietly, "That girl, the one people tried to humiliate? She's the one who's going to run this whole place." Elle didn't argue. Because for the first time in years, she could almost believe it, too. The first time someone called her chef. Elle almost dropped a mixing bowl. It was Max, one of the newer trainees, barely 20, wrists thin as broomsticks, knuckles raw from anxiety picking. He was chopping onions too slowly, knife gripped too tight, when he glanced up and said, "Chef, does this look right?" Elle blinked. He said it again, more cautiously. "Chef?" She moved behind him, adjusted his grip, tilted his wrist. "Better," she said quietly. "Don't force the blade. Let it glide." Max nodded like he'd just been given gospel. She stood there a moment longer, watching his hands, her own scar itching like it always did when the past crept close. In her 7 years at the diner, no one had ever called her anything but, "Hey, excuse me," or, at best, Elle. Now, in a kitchen not yet open to the public, her name had changed shape. It didn't feel like a compliment. It felt like a responsibility. That afternoon, Jack walked her through the latest inspection reports in the tiny, half-painted office that smelled faintly of primer and printer ink. "Health board's coming Friday," he said, flipping a clipboard toward her. "You pass this, we go live." Elle scanned the checklist. Storage labels, temperature logs, sanitation. All doable. "What's the catch?" she asked. "There isn't one." She raised an eyebrow. "Okay," he amended. "There's one small thing. A reporter's tagging along Friday morning? From the Tribune. Wants a local face of Second Chance's story. We've had donors pulling back since last quarter. We need this." Elle stiffened. Jack saw it. "You wouldn't be front and center. Maybe one quote. A photo if you're comfortable." She crossed her arms. "I'm not." He nodded slowly, folding the clipboard. "Okay." She waited for the persuasion, the charm, the inevitable pitch. But he said nothing else. Just stood, clipped the board to the wall, and gave her a look that said, "I'm not here to push you." Still, the silence that followed her into the locker room was heavier than expected. Elle sat on the bench, fingers tracing the names stitched on her uniform, E. Hart. It was the first time in years her name had been printed on anything other than a paycheck. She liked it more than she should. But she also knew what press meant. Photos meant focus. Focus meant the scar. And the last time a camera caught her off guard, prom night, senior year, a disposable flash freezing her into a moment she'd spent years trying to forget, the photo had ended up in someone's yearbook with Two-Face scribbled beneath in Sharpie. She hadn't taken a picture since. That night, back in her apartment, she opened a long sealed box beneath her bed. Inside were the remnants of a life paused too early, her culinary school acceptance letter, untouched since her mother's collapse, a photo of her at age 10 in a frilly pink apron, smiling with a cake in her hands and a much newer scar peeking across her cheek. She'd wanted to open a bakery once. She could still remember the name she'd scribbled on the back of a notebook, Heart and Crust. She laughed now, a dry, soft sound, and closed the box again. Friday came fast. The kitchen gleamed. Labels were perfect. Logs completed. Her team, patched together from recovery programs and transitional shelters, moved like they'd always known each other. The reporter arrived at 10:03 a.m., voice bright, questions softer than Elle expected. She was polite. Professional. Didn't even blink at the scar. Elle answered one or two questions, nothing personal. Then the photographer raised her camera. Just candid shots, she said. Natural. You in your element. Elle looked to Jack. He didn't say a word. Just nodded once. You choose. So Elle exhaled and turned back to the prep line. Click. Click. The sound didn't pierce her like it used to. Didn't crack her open. It was there, but distant. Like a bell in another town. The scar would be in the photo. But so would her hands, moving with precision. So would the team she built. The whiteboard behind her. The clipboard tucked in her apron. Her name on the wall, printed under. Acting kitchen lead. It was all there. And for once, it felt like a whole picture, not just one mark on her skin. After the team clocked out and the reporter packed her notes, Jack found Elle alone in the break room. You didn't have to do that, he said. I know. You okay? She paused. The scar, she said slowly, used to be the only thing people noticed. Now it's the last. He didn't respond. Just sat beside her, quiet. She looked at him. Why me? Why give me this? Jack leaned back in his chair. Because sometimes the best foundation is built on what's been broken. You've had everything stacked against you, and still, you walk in every day like this kitchen is yours. It isn't. It will be. There was no ceremony when it happened. No applause. Just a quiet email the following Monday from Haven's board of directors. Effective immediately, Elle Hart is appointed kitchen director of Haven West. She stared at the screen for a long time before closing it. And then, she went back to work. The photo ran in the Tribune the following Sunday. Elle didn't know it had been published until Max handed her a folded newspaper in the break room, his thumb smudging the ink near the byline. They made you look like a boss. He grinned. She braced herself before unfolding the page. There she was, in profile, mid-motion, pouring broth into a stockpot. The scar was visible, yes, but faint, softened by the light. Her name was printed cleanly beneath the image, Elle Hart, director of Haven West Kitchen, a non-profit culinary program for second-chance candidates. The quote they used was simple. Everyone deserves a place where their past doesn't follow them through the door. It took her several seconds to realize she was holding her breath. People liked it, Max said. I mean online. Comments are positive. Mostly. She exhaled. Mostly was good enough. By Tuesday, enrollment had doubled. Calls came in from shelters, halfway houses, even a women's reentry program in Joliet. Jack forwarded most of them to her directly. They want you, he said over a coffee they didn't have time for. Not just the kitchen. You. That quote hit hard. Elle shook her head. It was barely a sentence. Exactly, he said. That's why it worked. She didn't say what she was thinking. That it didn't feel like her quote. That the woman in the photo, the one moving with purpose and control, still felt separate from the one who sometimes double-checked the mirror for smudged eyeliner or kept her hand near her cheek out of reflex. But she didn't argue. Not out loud. The letter arrived that Thursday. No stamp. No return address. Just a white envelope slipped under the kitchen door sometime between morning prep and the delivery truck's late arrival. Elle almost threw it out, assuming it was another request for food donations or volunteer hours. But the paper was heavy, expensive. The kind her mother used to buy in bulk back when they still hosted Sunday dinners. Inside, a single sheet. Elle. I saw the article. You look well. I know I'm the last person you expected to hear from, but I'd like to talk. Just once. Ryan. Her stomach dropped. Ryan. The name pulsed like a siren behind her eyes. Ryan Caldwell. Her high school boyfriend. The only person she'd ever let trace the line of her scar without flinching. The only person who once made her believe it didn't matter. The same person who ghosted her senior year, 3 days after taking her virginity, and 2 days after a rumor spread that she'd used it to trap him. She hadn't heard from him since. She should have thrown the letter away. She didn't. That night she sat on her couch, legs folded beneath her, reading the letter over again. The photo on the newspaper was still open on her coffee table. Her name in print. Her title. Her face. What did he want now? She considered ignoring it. But something about the note gnawed at her, the absence of excuses, the simplicity of the ask. He hadn't said he was sorry. Hadn't said he was proud. Just that he wanted to talk. Her phone buzzed. Jack, still good for 7 a.m. planning session tomorrow? She typed yes. Also, question. Can I borrow the conference room Friday evening? Of course. Hot date. She stared at the screen before typing, something like that. He looked older. That was her first thought. Ryan Caldwell had always looked slightly too pretty to trust, sharp jaw, soft mouth, those reckless blue eyes. But now there were faint lines at his temples, and his hair had thinned a bit at the crown. He wore a tailored coat over jeans and boots, like someone trying hard not to look like he still checked his own reflection before entering a room. They met in the conference room at Haven. Elle arrived first, already seated when he walked in. He stopped short, hands in his pockets. Hi, he said. She didn't stand. Why now? Ryan nodded once, as if he'd expected no pleasantries. I saw the article. It threw me. I bet. He hesitated, then sat across from her. I didn't come here to justify what I did. High school me was an idiot. A coward. I know that. She said nothing. I just wanted to see if you were okay. If you'd. He stopped, searching for the right word. Made it. And you have. More than I ever thought possible. Elle narrowed her eyes. Why would you ever need to know that? Ryan hesitated. Because I said some ugly things. Walked away at a moment when you needed someone. And it haunted me longer than it should have. She waited. And, he added carefully, because I saw the article and realized I know someone on the board of Haven Projects. A major donor. They asked me to check in. Her chest tightened. There it is, she said coldly. Ryan looked up, startled. What? You didn't come for closure. You came because someone wanted you to vet me. No, it wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. Her voice dropped, low and dangerous. They saw the scar in the photo, didn't they? Thought maybe it'd be a PR risk. He didn't deny it. Thanks for confirming, she said, standing. Elle, wait. It wasn't. Look, I told them you were the best person they had. I meant it. I came because I wanted to see for myself. And I'm sorry, okay? For what I said. For how I disappeared. You didn't deserve that. She stared at him for a long moment. Then, quietly, no. I didn't. She walked to the door, paused. But thank you, she said, not looking back. You reminded me of something. What's that? Her voice was steady. That I don't need anyone's approval to be the person I became. She didn't tell Jack about the meeting. But when she opened the kitchen the next morning, she pulled the old whiteboard off the back wall and wrote a new line across it in thick black marker. You are not what they remember. You are what you've built. Max saw it first. Then Tanya. By noon, they were quoting it back to each other. And by closing time, Elle Hart knew she wasn't hiding anymore. The quote on the whiteboard stayed up for 2 weeks. It became more than a motto, it was a dare. Trainees recited it before interviews, whispered it before kitchen drills. Even Tanya, who barely spoke above a mutter her first month, started wearing it on a button she made with the office laminator. Elle didn't take credit. But when Jack brought in a visiting donor one afternoon and the woman pointed to the quote and asked who wrote it, Elle didn't look away. She did, Max said without hesitation, nodding at Elle. That's our chef. The title had stuck. She didn't argue anymore. By the end of the month, Haven West Kitchen had a wait list for its next cycle. The food bank partnership had expanded. Elle now managed a rotating team of 12, including 3 new trainees from the local shelter. One of them, Anita, had a hand tremor and a rap sheet, but peeled potatoes faster than anyone Elle had ever seen. She used to be a sous chef before prison. Jack explained. Lost everything when her daughter got sick. Elle took one look at Anita's knife work and said, "She's on sauces starting Monday." It felt like building a city, small bricks, slow layering, but something real rising out of the wreckage. And then the email came. Subject: Director Position, Expansion Opportunity. Elle clicked it open in the quiet office after everyone else had gone home. The logo at the top wasn't Haven's. It was Frameworks Culinary Group, a sleek, venture-backed restaurant incubator she vaguely remembered reading about. High-profile, high-gloss. Places that ended up in magazines, not community bulletins. Dear Ms. Hart, we came across your recent feature in the Tribune and were deeply impressed by the work you've done at Haven West. Frameworks is currently launching a new flagship training initiative in New York, blending culinary mentorship with workforce development. Your name came highly recommended. Elle's eyes narrowed. We'd like to discuss a leadership role, one with full creative control, relocation support, and compensation commensurate with your vision and value. Your story is powerful, and we believe it deserves a national platform. There was a contact number, a signature, a promise to follow up. Her heart thudded in her ears. It was everything she'd ever wanted. Recognition. Freedom. A real kitchen. No budget caps. No second-hand aprons or donated ingredients. But when she looked at the office wall, at the bulletin board filled with group photos, workshop schedules, scribbled thank you notes, the thrill in her chest twisted. Because leaving meant walking away from Max. From Anita. From Tanya, who finally learned to call out orders loud enough for the line to hear. It meant turning her back on the scarred version of herself who'd carved out a place here with shaking hands and unwavering resolve. She didn't respond to the email. Not immediately. Instead, she called Jack. They met at the park near the kitchen, just past dusk. Jack brought coffee. Elle didn't touch hers. "You've heard from Frameworks," he said. She nodded. "You're going to take it?" "I don't know yet." He studied her. "But you want to?" She didn't answer. Jack sipped his coffee. "You don't know Haven anything, Elle. What you built here, it's already bigger than us. If you want to go, go. No one would fault you." "But?" she asked. "But," he said, "don't let them turn your story into branding. You didn't survive all this just to become someone's brochure." Her throat tightened. "What if I can't grow more here?" "Then we'll grow with you," Jack said simply. "If you stay." That night, she sat on her fire escape, the city breathing below her. The Frameworks email glowed on her screen. Next to it, a photo of her team, all of them in aprons, laughing over a cake someone had burned and decorated anyway. She thought of what it meant to be seen. Not just admired. Known. Jack had never asked for anything more than what she wanted to give. Frameworks, they wanted her brand. Haven had asked for her bruises, her skill, her scar, and never once apologized for either. She closed the email. Slept without dreaming. In the morning, she walked into the kitchen and typed a message to Frameworks. "Thank you for your interest. I believe in what I've built here, and in the people who helped me build it. I'm staying where I'm needed. Where I'm home." She didn't need their validation. Not anymore. As she stepped onto the line, Max handed her a clipboard. "We're short 2 trays of produce. What should we sub?" Elle smiled faintly. "Improvise," she said. "But keep the spice ratio. Some of us still have taste buds." And the kitchen, her kitchen, laughed like a heartbeat. They painted her name on the wall the day before the ceremony. Elle Hart, Program Director, Haven West. Black letters, clean and bold, just above the kitchen's entrance. Tanya did the lettering by hand, tracing each curve as if it were a promise. The entire team stood around watching, pretending not to be moved. No one said anything about the scar. Not then. Not anymore. When the press came back for the launch anniversary, it wasn't about trauma or transformation. It was about leadership, outcomes, growth metrics, and recipes. Elle gave them her lentil stew formula, the same one she used when the pantry donations ran thin. Jack made a speech. Brief, warm, unscripted. She didn't just fix this kitchen, he said. She built something better in its place. Something stronger than concrete. A belief that we don't throw people away. Elle didn't like the attention. But she stood there anyway, surrounded by her team, wearing her apron and that quiet smile she'd learned to carry like armor. The applause didn't feel like a spotlight. It felt like home. Later that night, after the guests were gone and the confetti had been swept into gray plastic bins, Jack found her standing alone in the back prep room, wiping down surfaces that didn't need it. You didn't flinch once, he said. You used to duck when people clapped. She kept her eyes on the counter. Still does something weird to my stomach. But, Elle paused. It doesn't feel like a mistake anymore. Being seen. Jack leaned against the doorframe. You know, we got another offer this week. She looked up. For what? A second location. Bronzeville. Community Center wants us to replicate the program. Elle turned back to the counter, her pulse quickening. That's big. We need someone to run it, he said. Not just administrate, build. Like you did here. She felt it then, the old fear clawing its way back. The risk. The pressure. The chance to fall. You sure I'm ready? She asked quietly. I'm sure you're the only one who is. She didn't say yes. Not yet. But she didn't say no either. A week later, she stood in the middle of the new, unrenovated space in Bronzeville, floors scuffed, walls bare, windows covered with dust. It smelled like old paint and potential. Anita stood beside her, arms crossed. This place needs everything, she muttered. Elle smiled. Exactly. They began planning that same afternoon. Roster ideas. Partnerships. A curriculum that focused not just on food prep but on food justice, sourcing, accessibility, nutrition in food deserts. And Elle, for the first time, started writing under her own name. Press releases. Training guides. Grant applications. No ghostwriters. No borrowed voices. The scar was still there, but no longer the headline. Just a part of her face. A part of her history. Then came the voicemail. Hi, Elle. This is Claire Ferguson from WCN News. We're doing a feature on impact leaders from underrepresented backgrounds. Your stories come up repeatedly. We'd love to film a short profile. Something real. Raw. Honest. Call us back when you can. Elle sat in her office for a full hour after hearing it. She didn't call back. But the team found out anyway. You should do it, Max said. You're the reason I stopped thinking I was a screw-up. Tanya nodded. If people like us knew someone like you was out here, it would have changed things sooner. The idea terrified her. Not the camera. The truth. When the crew arrived, Elle made only one request: no makeup. No staging. No script. She wanted the noise. The chaos. The chopping and shouting and music from someone's phone speaker. She wore her apron. Didn't hide the scar. Didn't lean away from the questions. They asked about her past. She told them just enough. They asked about the future. That's when she hesitated. Future's always shifting, she said finally. But I know I'll be in a kitchen. With people like this. Trying to feed more than hunger. That line made the final cut. When the segment aired, the response was overwhelming. Emails. Letters. Handwritten notes from women in shelters who saw her and saw a future. I'll read every one. Somewhere between the fourth and fifth letter she cried. Not because she was overwhelmed. Because she realized, for the first time, she'd stopped apologizing for surviving. A month later, she took the long way home. Walked past the diner where it had all started. The place looked smaller now. Closed, in fact. A sign in the window, redevelopment in progress. She didn't feel satisfaction. Only silence. In her pocket, her phone buzzed, a message from Jack. They want to name the Bronzeville kitchen after you. She stared at the screen for a long time. Then she typed, only if we make it about the people in it. Name the program after them. Already knew you'd say that, Jack replied. But figured I'd ask anyway. She slipped the phone away, wind curling around her coat. The streetlights flickered above. She walked on, head high, the night steady at her back. The envelope was pale blue, handwritten, postmarked from Indiana. Elle almost threw it away. She didn't recognize the name on the return address. But the cursive looked careful, deliberate, the kind of penmanship her mother used when writing condolence notes or holiday cards. Something made her open it. Inside was a short letter. Dear Elle, you don't know me. My name is Marlene. My daughter, Krista, just finished your training program. She came home after graduation and made dinner, real dinner, for the first time in years. She set the table. Said grace. Told her little brother to sit up straight. Then she smiled at me like she used to. You gave her back to us. You didn't just feed people. You gave her a reason to stand in her own kitchen again. Thank you. Marlene Hill. Elle read it twice. Then a third time. She placed it on her desk and stared at it until the words began to blur. No one had ever written to thank her for a life changed. Not directly. Not like this. Not for giving someone back their daughter. The Bronzeville site was still in the ugly phase of birth, drywall dust in the corners, paint swatches taped along the windows, paperwork multiplying like weeds. But the energy was different. Her team, a mix of old hands and new hires, moved like they believed in it already. Anita ran the line like a drill sergeant. Max, now 2 years clean, had become Elle's unofficial second-in-command. He called her boss half the time and Elle the rest, a balance she never corrected. The kitchen was noisy, messy, full of movement. But every day, someone new stepped in and paused like they'd found something they didn't know they were looking for. Then, in early spring, Sarah showed up. Not a trainee. Not a visitor. A journalist. Hi, she said, holding out her press badge. I'm Sarah Colvin. I covered your first program for the local news. I've been following your work. This isn't for a puff piece. I'm doing a feature series on women rebuilding communities. Elle had grown used to media. But Sarah's tone wasn't surface deep. She asked hard questions. About retention rates. About funding gaps. About what it meant to burn out while leading something meant to sustain others. You ever think about walking away? Sarah asked, watching her carefully. Every month, Elle said without flinching. But I never do. Why? Because I'd have to explain it to the people who don't have the luxury. After the interview, Sarah asked to shadow her for a day. Elle agreed. She didn't alter the schedule. They visited a farm partner at dawn. Ran 3 training blocks back to back. Handled a vendor who shorted them eggs. Delivered leftovers to the nearby shelter. Conducted a late-night intake for a woman fleeing domestic violence. At the end of it, Sarah leaned against the prep counter, eyes wide. Do you ever rest? No, Elle said, tired but honest. But some nights, I sleep better than I used to. Because of this place? Because it's louder than the past. Sarah nodded slowly. That's going in the story. The article went viral. Not because it was flashy. Because it was raw. The Quiet Rebuilder, the headline read. Scarred by more than skin, Elle Hart is reshaping what resilience looks like. The comments poured in. Survivors. Parents. Educators. Former inmates. All saying the same thing in different ways. You made me feel seen. She didn't respond to any of them. But she printed one. I didn't think I could be anything other than my mistakes. Then I read your story. Now I'm trying again. I applied to Haven East. I start Monday. Elle taped it beside Marlene's letter. She didn't need awards. Or grants. Or another interview. This was the proof. The program was no longer hers alone. It belonged to the people who walked through the doors with nothing but hunger and left with something resembling purpose. That Sunday, she stood in the middle of the Bronzeville kitchen. The new banner had just arrived. Haven South Training Center, directed by L. Hart. She touched the fabric lightly, then stepped back. Jack appeared beside her, holding coffee. "You're quiet." "I'm thinking," she said. "About?" She looked at the banner again. "What happens when I'm no longer the one holding this place up?" "You build people who can." She nodded. "Already started." Jack smiled. "Of course you have." She didn't smile back, not quite. But she looked him in the eye and said the words she'd been holding in since the day she took the job. "I'm ready to let it grow without me at the center." And in saying it, she knew it was true. It started as a suggestion. "You should take a break," Jack said. "Not a day. A real one. A week. Maybe more." Elle scoffed. "Not possible." Jack didn't push. But over the next few days, others started dropping hints too. Tanya offered to take over training logs. Max handed her a revised scheduling system. Even Anita muttered something about not needing a babysitter anymore. By Friday, she found a flyer taped to her office chair. Wellness retreat, 3 days of silence, nature, and restoration. At the bottom, someone had scrawled in Sharpie, "You give peace. Time to get some back." No one confessed, but the handwriting looked suspiciously like Max's. She didn't laugh. She didn't throw it away either. That night she sat in her apartment, staring at the ceiling fan, hearing the hum of her own exhaustion. It had been years since she'd had 3 days without kitchen schedules, funding meetings, or the heavy responsibility of someone else's second chance. It felt indulgent. It also felt terrifying. She went. Packed 3 books she didn't open. Left her phone powered down. Arrived in a quiet lodge 2 hours outside the city, surrounded by pines, lake mist, and silence that ached in her ears at first. The first day, she walked aimlessly, unsure what to do with her hands. The second day, she slept until noon. The third day, she stood barefoot in the shallow lake, the cold shocking her ankles, the wind sharp enough to make her eyes water. That night, she dreamed of her mother, vivid clear, sitting at their old kitchen table, slicing apples for pie. Her voice was calm. "You kept going, Elle. Now let yourself stay still. Just for a moment." She woke up sobbing into the pillow. It was the first time in years she'd cried for no one else but herself. When she returned, the Bronzeville kitchen was humming. Efficient. Focused. Anita raised an eyebrow when Elle walked in. "Didn't burn anything down." Tanya grinned. "Max almost cried. But we got through it." Max, red-faced, added, "Your inbox is a nightmare." Elle stood in the middle of the kitchen for a long moment. Nothing needed her. And instead of fear, she felt something unexpected. Pride. A week later, she sat with Jack in their now regular late afternoon slot at the park. "You ever think about what's next?" she asked. "For you or for Haven?" "Both." Jack nodded slowly. "We've started planning a headquarters. A national program model. Fellowships. Train the trainer systems. We're thinking about legacy." Elle's throat tightened. "And me?" He looked at her then. "Whatever you want to be." "I don't know what I want," she said honestly. He nodded again. "Then don't decide yet. But know this, you've already done more than most people do in a lifetime." That night, she found an old email from Frameworks. Archived, ignored. This time, she replied. Not with interest in their offer, but with a single sentence. "I'm building something better than a brand. Thank you, but I already found where I'm meant to lead." She hit send, closed her laptop, and watched the streetlights blink on across the city. 3 months later, she stood in front of the first cohort of Haven leaders, graduates from Haven West, Haven South, and the new pilot site in Milwaukee. She wasn't teaching. Not directly. She was handing them keys. Literal ones? To kitchens? To programs? To futures? She looked across the room, at the scarred faces, the calloused hands, the hesitant hope in their eyes. You're not here to prove yourselves, she told them. You already did that the moment you showed up. You're here because people will need you, and you'll know how to answer. One hand went up. What if we mess up? Elle smiled. For real. Then you do what I did, she said. You stay. You listen. You start again. Afterward, someone approached quietly. A young woman with a braid and nervous eyes. Can I ask something personal? Elle nodded. How'd you learn not to hate the scar? Elle's fingers hovered at her cheek for the briefest moment, a habit not quite unlearned. I didn't, she said softly. I learned to stop apologizing for it. The girl blinked, nodded, and walked away like she was carrying something valuable. And Elle? She turned back toward the makeshift stage, alone in the soft light of the rec center, and let the silence settle around her. It no longer hurt. It simply was. The diner reopened under new ownership with a fresh coat of paint, new tiles, and a rebranded menu that swapped greasy burgers for quinoa bowls and avocado toast. But the bones were the same layout, same counter curve, same window booths worn soft by 1,000 elbows. Elle passed it by accident one rainy afternoon, caught between meetings and waiting for the storm to ease. She hesitated beneath the awning, hands deep in her coat pockets. A girl inside, 19 maybe, stood behind the counter refilling sugar jars, humming to herself, her cheeks pink with nervous focus. Elle remembered exactly how it felt. And before she could think better of it, she stepped inside. The bell above the door chimed. The girl looked up. Smiled. Seat yourself? I'll be right there. Elle chose the booth by the window, the one where they used to whisper about her. The one where she once served coffee to a man who changed her life with a business card. The girl returned with water and a laminated menu. Something warm today? Just coffee, Elle said. Black. The girl blinked, nodded. Old school. I like it. When she left, Elle turned to the window. The rain streaked the glass. Across the street, a delivery truck blocked a fire hydrant, its driver arguing with a meter maid. Normal life. Noise and friction. All of it, the same street that once held her shame, now folded around her like neutral air. She was no longer hiding. She was observing. She was whole. Halfway through the cup, someone entered. She didn't see him at first. But the shape of his voice, low, careful, reached her like a scent from another room. Excuse me, he said. Is that Elle? She turned slowly. Tom Martinez stood near the counter, soaked from the rain, holding a box of bakery pastries like a peace offering. Time had softened him. Less hair. Broader shoulders. The telltale weariness of someone who'd lived long enough to regret the right things. I heard you might be in town, he said. Didn't expect to see you here. I wasn't planning to stop, she replied, voice even. But the weather didn't ask. He nodded toward the booth. Mind if I? Elle gestured to the empty seat across from her. Sure. They sat in silence for a moment, the clink of dishes and soft hum of rain filling the space. I saw the news segment, Tom said. Read the Tribune piece. You've done more than anyone I knew in high school. More than all of us combined. Elle stirred her coffee. He hesitated. I think about it more than I want to admit, how we treated you. How I laughed along. Stayed quiet when I should have spoken. She looked at him now. Fully. Steady. You weren't the worst, she said. But you weren't innocent. No. Another pause. I'm not here to ask forgiveness, he said quietly. Just to acknowledge it. To let you say whatever you've carried for too long. Elle sipped her coffee. Let the warmth root her. I carried it, she said. Then I built something heavier. And stronger. And now, I don't need the past to explain the present anymore. Tom nodded. His eyes glistened, but he didn't look away. You don't owe me anything, he said. I know. He smiled faintly. Still needed to say it. The girl returned with a fresh pot. Refills? Elle tilted her mug. Sure. She poured, then glanced at Tom. You too, sir? He laughed. I feel old just hearing that. The girl flushed, shrugged playfully, and moved on. Tom shook his head, smiling. She reminds me of you. Elle raised an eyebrow. Hopefully not too much. No, he said. Just enough. They didn't talk much after that. Tom left the box of pastries behind. For your staff, he said. If you're headed back to Haven. She carried it out with her, the rain having slowed to a soft drizzle. Outside, the city buzzed with the usual impatience. But Elle walked slower now. Her coat soaked at the edges, her heart light. Back at Haven, Tanya greeted her at the door. Storm bad? Not anymore, Elle said. Max appeared from the break room. Someone sent pastries. Elle held up the box. From someone who used to be part of my story? Not anymore. Good, Anita muttered, grabbing the box and heading for the kitchen. More sugar. That's what we need. But her tone was fond. Elle watched them move, bantering, busy, her team, her legacy, and felt the quiet tug of arrival. Not triumph. Peace. The scar on her cheek was just skin now. And the past, for the first time, stayed behind her. Spring came early that year. The trees outside Haven South bloomed in defiance of the weather forecast, their branches full of pale pink blossoms that scattered like paper confetti across the sidewalk. Inside, the kitchen buzzed with quiet rhythm, prep stations humming, laughter under breath, knives tapping in metronome time. Elle no longer ran the morning briefings. That was Tanya's job now. Max handled supplier negotiations. Anita trained new instructors. Elle floated between, observing, advising, stepping in only when silence meant uncertainty. She had become the calm in the room. No longer at the center. Still essential. That morning, she tucked a small recipe card into the corner of the bulletin board. Handwritten. No label. Just ingredients, loose measurements, and a note at the bottom. Adjust seasoning until it tastes like coming home. No one asked if it was hers. But someone underlined the last line and added a small heart beside it. Later, in her office, now smaller, tucked away, Elle opened a final letter. It was from the city. An official notice. The Haven model has been adopted as a pilot for a new municipal workforce reintegration initiative. There was a ceremony next month. A plaque. A speech. Her name would be included, though she'd asked for it to be placed below the names of the first graduates. Legacy didn't need a spotlight. It just needed to last. That afternoon, she stepped into the test kitchen. The youngest cohort was working on improvisation drills, build a meal from 5 random ingredients. No recipes. No rules. A girl with a shaved head and a chipped front tooth held up a plate, beaming. Try this, chef? Elle tasted it. Warm. Spicy. Unapologetic. It's not perfect, the girl said. Elle smiled. Neither are we. That night, she walked home alone. No noise in her chest. No ache in her steps. The lights of Bronzeville flickered gently around her. Somewhere, a car alarm chirped once and went quiet. A boy on a bike shouted for someone to wait up. And in all that movement, Elle felt stillness settle inside her. Not the stillness of exhaustion. The stillness of arrival. She reached her building. Paused. Looked back once. The windows of Haven still glowed behind her, gold against the dusk. And in that soft light, Elle, heart scarred, steady, whole, whispered something just for herself. I made it. And then she walked inside.